You're watching CW Montana. This is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The U.S. Senate race between Governor Steve Bullock and Republican incumbent Steve Daines, certainly one of the top Senate contests in the country and is expected to be competitive. Now a new poll from Montana State University shows that is precisely the case and has Bullock actually leading Senator Daines. MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison reports.
The online poll conducted late last month asked registered Montana voters who they'd choose in Montana's U.S. Senate race if the election were held now. 46% said they would vote for Bullock, a Democrat, and 39% said Daines. 7% said they're undecided, and 6% said they'd vote for someone else. The poll also showed that 70% of Montanans approve of the job that Bullock is doing in response to the coronavirus pandemic. It asked the same question about Senator Daines' response, and just 48% said they approve, but 28% said they don't know. Montana State University political scientist David Parker told MTN News he's not surprised by the results, given the huge amount of publicity Bullock has received during the COVID-19 pandemic. But he notes that Bullock's lead is still within the poll's 4.6% plus or minus margin of error.
I think it's certainly reasonable to assume that the race is probably within the margin of error and too close to call. So yes, while we show a lead, again, it's within the margin of error. So I would say, yeah, this is a competitive Senate race, and I think our poll demonstrates that.
Still, he says the poll is worrisome for Senator Daines and good news for Bullock.
It just demonstrates the information advantage that executives have in times of crisis. So we got an information advantage. People like the job that Bullock is doing. He was already pretty popular. And then let's add the final piece of the equation. Steve Daines has been on TV since early March with television advertisements. Do you know how much Steve Bullock has spent on TV? Zero. So that certainly should be a cause for concern.
The poll also asked how Montana voters felt about President Trump and the presidential election. 53% said they approve of how the president is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. But in the fall presidential matchup against Democrat Joe Biden, 45.3% of Montanans said they would vote for the president, and 39.7% said they'd choose Biden, a difference of just 5.6 percentage points. Parker says that probably means Montanans are more open in 2020 to considering someone else besides Trump than in 2016. But that the president remains in good political position in the Big Sky state.
Does this mean that I think Montana's suddenly going to go Democratic in 2020? I don't. Yes, the race is within the margin of error, but if I were still laying down money in Vegas, I'd put money on Donald Trump winning Montana.
And one last thing to mention. It's only May. We have a political eternity until the November election and an unprecedented national crisis still unfolding. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And you can see that entire MSU poll on our website, ktvq.com. A Democratic super PAC has made the first major independent media buy in Montana's U.S. Senate race, attacking Republican incumbent Steve Daines. The Senate Majority PAC, whose main task is to elect Democrats to the Senate, began running the ad in Montana TV markets Saturday. It accuses Daines of worrying most about corporate profits during the coronavirus pandemic while opposing some benefits for workers. The Daines campaign called the ad outright lies and distortion and says Daines supported worker benefits in stimulus bills. Daines also called on his likely opponent, Governor Steve Bullock, to denounce the ad as financed by so-called dark money. Senate Majority PAC reports its spending and donors to federal regulators. The Bullock campaign declined to denounce that ad and instead noted that Bullock is a strong supporter of efforts to regulate dark money spending. At least 3 outside groups also have spent about $350,000 to help Daines' re-election. Billings High School seniors may cross the graduation stage at Metro Park after all. After school district officials consulted with disease control doctors, it looks like more flexibility can be found to give students and their parents a true ceremony. Now, the plan's not entirely nailed down, but we do know fewer spectators will be allowed this year if it happens. Q2's Mitch Legge brings us the details.
At the school board meeting Monday night, Billings School District 2 Superintendent Greg Upham said that he reached out to Billings Clinic's disease control team to see if different accommodations could be made for high school graduation. Upham said the total number of people that will be allowed inside the ceremony is undetermined right now. That number will depend on how safely people can flow through the First Interstate Arena while maintaining social distance. The time it takes to sanitize surfaces between ceremonies is also a consideration for attendance numbers. The Billings Clinic's team is working with staff at Metro Park and county health officials to determine seating arrangements for graduates and spectators. Upham said the goal is to stick to the original date for graduation on May 24th, with the possibility of adding a second day if they have to break up the 3 high schools into multiple ceremonies.
I feel more comfortable with the level of expertise that we have to go out and look at the Metro and see just exactly what we can do by allowing for a larger gathering. I can't say how large yet. They want to look at the facility to see, what type of organization that we can put together to ensure the social distancing and maintain safety.
And the plan for graduation is still flexible. Upham said that if COVID-19 cases start to rise in Yellowstone County, the ceremony could become more limited. In Billings, Mitch Laggy, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mitch. There are about 400 students in each graduating class at the 3 Billings high schools. If students would like to opt out of the Metro ceremony, you're asked to contact your principal. As communities work through this forever changed world, confirmed COVID-19 cases continue to dwindle here in the state. That's good news. This afternoon, health authorities report 30 active cases statewide. There are no new confirmed cases again. In fact, Montana's confirmed total dropped by 1. State health authorities say they've determined that a case thought to be from Fergus County has not been a Montana resident for nearly a year and does not pose a known risk. This afternoon, Governor Bullock announced $123 million in emergency grant funding for families, small businesses, and others hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. This first round of emergency grants is funded through the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. The funding will be allocated through 9 programs designed to address key COVID-19 issues. Those include emergency housing assistance, reducing social isolation among seniors, small business stabilization, and public health grants. Montana was allocated $1.25 billion in CARES Act funds, the federal minimum amount for states. Bullock says the state will use this first round of funding to help determine where it is most needed and will adjust later funding.
And Montanans have made it clear that we must step in and do everything possible to ensure that small businesses can responsibly reopen, that nonprofits can continue to serve our communities, that homeowners can stay in their homes, and Montanans most in need have access to services.
Beginning Thursday at 8 a.m., people can start to apply for assistance at covidrelief.mt.gov. After a grant is approved, the state's plan is to send that money out as soon as possible. Well, police say that they have received another report of a church being Zoom bombed here in Billings. That's a term used for when a hacker gains access and disrupts an online meeting on the popular video conferencing Zoom app that many people are now using. We told you yesterday that a hacker disrupted the online service at Billings First Congregational Church Sunday by posting graphic images of child abuse. The church promptly reported the incident to police. It's now under investigation. Well, BPD then received another report about another incident involving inappropriate behavior that happened the Sunday before during an online service at Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Police encourage people to research the specific platform they're using and follow recommended security procedures. Well, Billings police say they are actively chasing leads in a murder case that left a man dead near Central Park last week. But tonight, charging documents are giving us a better understanding of what led to that deadly shooting. 24-year-old Brett Ness died from a gunshot wound to the head Monday, April 27th in the driveway of a home on Florine Lane. Since then, police have been trying to track down the person responsible for Ness's death. One woman, 18-year-old Rayshaw Blacksmith, was already arrested in connection with the homicide and charged with felony obstruction. Court documents say Blacksmith witnessed the shooting, allowed the shooter in her car, then drove the shooter to a home near Terry and Central Avenue. Prosecutors say police are reviewing video footage from a nearby building that shows 5 people getting out of 2 cars before Ness was shot. Well, Billings police want to put on the brakes and slow down cruising events that have been taking place the past few weeks. Police Chief Rich St. John calls it a developing trend that is concerning and needs to be addressed. Now, this was the scene a couple Friday nights ago as hundreds of cars packed 24th Street and many people crowded into parking lots along the way. Chief says he understands people are tired of being cooped up. He says most of them do not create problems, but some do, and that's becoming a growing concern. Last week, there were more than 100 warnings and citations given out, and the police chief says there were also 2 high-speed chases that went out to the interstate.
Private parking lots, we're seeing large, raucous crowds. Some people are drinking. There's litter. Some people are engaged in disorderly behavior, verbally abusing others, to include patrolling officers. More problematic is the reckless and dangerous driving that has become all too common. Burnouts, brodies, cutting through parking lots, impeding emergency vehicles, and fleeing traffic stops, DUI, all creates a significant danger to everybody.
The chief says that police will be partnering with the Highway Patrol and increasing their presence in the future. There's also an ordinance against cruising and loitering in Billings that he says police can enforce, but he says there are other things he would like his officers to work on, and he hopes people will tone it down on their own. The essential workers across Montana will get a big display of thank you tomorrow. C-130 aircraft from the Montana Air National Guard will perform flyovers of more than 20 cities and towns, all to salute workers in the fight against COVID-19. That event begins in Great Falls around 10:15 in the morning, where 2 C-130s will fly over Benefice Hospital. One aircraft will then fly east, the other west. Air National Guard officials say the flyovers are part of the Air Force Salutes program. And here in the Q2 viewing area, the plane is expected to pass over Glendive around 11:55 a.m., Miles City at 12:15, Hardin at 12:40, and it will fly over Billings around 12:50 and then on to Livingston and about 1:10 and then over Bozeman. But before that salute from the air here in Billings, that thank you starts on the ground. First responders across the region will share their appreciation for healthcare workers with a parade of patrol cars, fire trucks, and EMS units. First responders will start on 12th Avenue North and North 27th, then travel through and around both St. Vincent Healthcare and Billings Clinic campuses, and they'll finish down North 27th to Riverstone Health Clinic. If you line up on the street, you're asked to please adhere to social distancing guidelines. All right, still to come on tonight's MTN 9 o'clock news, a small Montana school about to set a nationwide mark as it prepares to open its classrooms for students. We'll show you how they're doing it. But first, Bob McGuire's in with your full 7-day forecast.